Well, what's up everybody? Today we're talking thumbnails. And in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to take an image that looks like this and turn it into this in just a few minutes. Now I'm going to be using Lightroom and Affinity Design for this tutorial, but pretty much any photo editing software will work, so just use whatever you've got. And on the off chance you don't have any photo editing software, then I would recommend you check out Pixelmator Pro. It's only 40 bucks and it's got everything that you're going to need to make awesome thumbnails. Link in the description, not a sponsor, I just really like their software. Okay, if you want to jump straight to the edit, then I've left some chapter markers below so that you can move forward. But if you're new to YouTube, you may be wondering or asking yourself, what is the big deal with all these thumbnails? Why are they so important? So I want to take a minute and explain why they are the most important part of your video. That's right, it's not your content, it's not the title, it's not the hashtags you use. Sure, all that stuff's important. They pale in comparison to the thumbnail, and here's why. YouTube generates about 2.3 billion visitors a month, and whether they are using search to find their specific video or they just start scrolling through their home feed, the thumbnail is the first thing that captures their attention. It's like the headline of your sales letter. Now, legendary ad man David Ogilvy said, on average, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. When you've written your headline, you've spent 80 cents out of your dollar. What he meant was, if the headline doesn't capture their attention, then there is zero chance that they're going to read the rest of your ad. So 80% of your time should be spent crafting a great headline. Now the same's true for our thumbnails. If your image doesn't stop them from scrolling and draw them in, then there is zero chance that your video is going to get watched, and it's not going to matter how good your content is. So it's something that we as content creators cannot afford to neglect. So let's jump into this edit and see if we can recreate some of this magic. Alright, so here we are in Lightroom, and I've got 3 different images here. First of all, this is the raw image that I shot right here in the studio, and then right next to that we have the edited version with the color grade on it, and then last but not least I just have the finished version with the VSL Leica Pro logo kind of woven into my my background or into my image here, and we're going to show you how to do all of this really quickly. So the fastest way to do this is just to use a LUT. And a LUT is nothing but a pre-done color grade for your image that you use and you apply rather than going through the steps we're going to use today. You can think of it like a filter you would use on Instagram. And you can pick these things up anywhere. I have a ton of them in here. If you just go down and start looking at all of these different LUTs that I've got in here, and we can put, if I go back over to my original image here, we can end up putting pretty much any one of these LUTs on. And as you can see, most of them are garbage, so you don't use them. But every once in a while, you'll find a really good set of LUTs. And the good news is they're pretty cheap. You can buy a ton of them for 20 bucks or 30 bucks. But today, I'm actually going to be walking you through this process and showing you exactly how we would do this from scratch. So we're not going to use a LUT today. The way I like to do it is I like to just come in here and immediately just start playing a little bit with exposure and stuff and contrast. I always start at the very top and kind of work my way down. We're going to pull. If you look at this image, you can see that we don't have a lot of contrast in here. We've kind of pulled a lot of that out. It's almost like there's a hazy look to the outside of the image. The way we're going to do that is just to kind of reduce the contrast here, reduce the highlights a little bit. You can kind of see if we go all the way. If you want to make moves, I like to make big moves so I can see what it looks like if I go all the way to the extremes, and then just kind of dial it in where I think it should go. Does that make sense? And then we're going to come in, and the shadows, we're going to boost these shadows all the way up. And the reason I'm doing this is just, I played around with this before, and I realized that I didn't like them down here, and if I blew them out like I did here, it's going to help us create that nice little hazy look by removing all of the shadows. Now with the whites, I'm also going to bump up the whites a little bit to kind of give us that same look as well. And then we're going to crush the blacks just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit in there to kind of make that work. Next thing I'm going to do is move down to my hue, my point curve. And this thing is really cool. It takes a long time to get to know and get comfortable using these sort of curves. But you'll notice if I pull this up, again, I'm going to start to wash out that image until it's all gone if I go all the way up here. And then if I go here, I can kind of do the same thing with the highlights. So on the left are the shadows, on the right are my highlights. And what I want to do here is I don't want the whole thing to curve. I just kind of want this very end to kind of curve up. I want to pull some of that out without damaging kind of the rest of the image, if that makes sense. And this just came from playing a little bit with the programs. We'll just do just a little bit to kind of like pull again to get that kind of hazy, saturated look to this thing. Now we're going to come down here to the color. This is where we can mess with the temperature, and we can make it cooler, we can make it warmer, right? And we just want to sort of kind of start to cool it off a little bit. Now we're not going to do a whole ton right here with the temperature. We just want that casual little bit of coolant that's going to help us out. We're not going to mess with the tint. The tint will take us more green or take us more magenta, but I kind of like that, the way that's starting to look just like that. Now with the vibrance, we're going to start to punch up some of those colors. And vibrance it works a lot like saturation, although I like using vibrance more than I do sat. I feel like saturation gives me kind of a false color versus or too intense of a color, whereas just boosting the vibrance a little bit gives me a really, really nice image. And as you can see, we're already starting to get closer to that image we were looking for, right? Now, moving right along, what we want to do now is move down into our effects area. Actually, we're going to play around a little bit with the color mixer here as well. So I don't want to mess with the reds. There's not a ton of reds. So in this color mixer is where I can isolate colors. So let's say I want to go here to my orange, and I want to play around a little bit with the orange here and maybe punch up some of the skin tone in here. Well, I can do that just by coming here and raising that saturation, and then I can also increase or decrease the luminance. And you'll watch as I bring the luminance down, the brightness down, it intensifies that color. See how now that looks ugly. But if we just ever so slightly play around with this a little bit, bring that luminance down some, we're going to get a nice little look. Now with the yellows too, we're going to kind of play with those a little bit. I don't want to see if I go too much either way, it starts to look trashy. Maybe we'll just leave those alone. Let's go with our greens here. Let's kind of bunch it. I don't have a lot of green in here, but we can kind of play a little bit with the hue in the carpet. You can kind of see it in the carpet. And again, a lot of this stuff is really just personal feel. It's the cool thing about any sort of creative activity is it really just is what you like, and you can create the kind of image that you want to regardless of what somebody else may like. And again, the idea here is to create something unique that's going to capture your audience's attention when they're scrolling through YouTube. So it makes them want to stop and say, whoa, wait a minute, that's different, that's unique. What is this video about, right? So again, moving on down the line, we'll take a look at our, I don't even know what color that is. It's kind of like a foam green color, and we'll kind of like take the saturation and boost that up if we can find any. There's really not any in the image, is there? All right, let's move on down to texture here and take a look at some of this. Now, I want to pull some of the texture out. What that's going to do is, you see if I go all the way to the right, how it really gets grainy? There's a lot of that in there. I want to pull some of that out just to kind of create more of a gentle image. And then with clarity, I can either remove the clarity and give it a nice little glow, or I can run the other way with it and I can bring in and make it look almost like an HDR image here. Now, I don't want all that much. I just want maybe just a little bit in there. And then vignette, to put a little vignette around here and kind of put my subject, me as the subject, in the forefront, I'm going to crush this down a little bit. And again, personal choice. You want to go all the way down? That's probably not going to look great. You can go white if you go the other direction. We just want a little subtle kind of like blending and darkening of the edges that'll make it look a lot cooler. Next, we'll come down to detail. We're just going to add a little bit of sharpening in. We're going to try and crisp up that image. And if I go all the way, you can't see much. It's hard to tell probably on the video. But if I zoom in here, maybe you can see what this looks like. So if I bring all the sharpness out, you can just see how it kind of brightens everything up a little bit. Not a ton. We don't need a ton there. And then let's bring some of the noise reduction down. The idea here is you see all this noise around my hat and head and everything. If we bring this noise reduction in, we're just kind of cleaning up that image. You see how it's kind of getting rid of that? And we can clean up color noise as well. Again, just kind of play with that. I kind of like a little bit of noise in there. I don't want it just completely clean. Maybe just bring this back a little bit. Okay. Again, really about personal preference. And as we come back and forth, you see we're pretty much in the same area here. Probably a little too much on the vibrance if we wanted to, but again, it's personal preference. You're rarely going to get two grades exactly the same. Let's go ahead and just bring that back a little bit. Maybe even bring this up a little bit. I don't want to kill too much of those. So now we've got our image, we've got something unique. If we look at before and after, see how cool we turned that image. What looked like a really junky image that you'd just be a throwaway, we brought it in, we've done a little bit of work to it, we've been able to create and give this film, or I'm sorry, this photo a little bit of character. Now the next thing we got to do is we've got to bring in, and we've got to first crop the image, and then come in and put this VSL Like a Pro logo in here. And the way we're going to do that, we can crop now or we can crop when we go over to Affinity. But I'm just going to go ahead and crop in here because it's easier to do that way. And to do that, I'm going to come up here to my crop. I'm going to go right here at the top where it says Original. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go 16 by 9. And now I'm just going to come in and kind of crop this where I want it to be. And I can make it any size. It doesn't really matter. Again, do I want my whole foot in there? Do I want this whole deal over here? I kind of want myself to be more centered. There's a rule of threes here that says, you know, you put subjects on the thirds. Now the camera here and me are kind of right here in this right third, which is going to be good. So I'm kind of happy with that. I'm going to say okay, click back over here, and now I have my image and we're getting closer to the end result here. Now the next thing I need to do is I just need to export this. So I'm going to go up to my export, and I'm going to export the full large JPEG image because I want the highest quality one possible. Now if you have Photoshop, you can actually export directly to Photoshop from Lightroom, and you don't have to do this sort of like export here and then reopen it in Affinity. We don't have that luxury, so I got to do it this way. I'm going to click large JPEG, I'm going to save it to my desktop, boom, and done. Now let's open up Affinity, and Affinity Designer is a lot like Photoshop and helps you kind of create layers inside of your edit. And the nice thing about this is it's not $20 a month. I think it's $50 or $60 one-time payment, and this is an exceptional product. So if you're interested in something like this, please go check it out. If you can't afford Photoshop, Affinity has a suite of products that work really great. Now, first thing that we want to do here is we're going to open up a new document. And 1920 by 1080 is a standard high definition image. That's what most of your YouTube videos will be, and it certainly is what your thumbnails are. Now thumbnails need to be 1280 by 720, but what we can do is we'll just compress that image down. The 16 by 9 format is what you need to pay attention to. And the first thing we need to create is we need to create that VSL. So again, the first thing we need to do is create this VSL Like a Pro kind of logo in here. And to do that, we're just going to come in here. I'm going to grab my text tool. I'm going to type VSL. And the font I like to use for most of this stuff is Bebes New. And you'll find this is a really, really, really popular font. Okay, so we'll take this Bebes New. We'll make it a little bit bigger. And then what we're going to do is we're going to expand it out. So I'm going to come over here to this section, and I'm just going to spread this VSL logo out. So I'm going to spread the letters out so that I got a nice little space in here. And I can't remember how much I did it on the first one, but we'll just come up with something that looks halfway decent, and we'll go from there. I think that probably looks good right there. Okay, and then underneath that, with the same font, go Like a Pro. And again, we're going to change that to Bebes. Good grief. There we go. And for this, instead of choosing regular, I'm going to choose book. And that's just going to make it a little bit thinner and kind of add a little bit of, you know, a little bit of something to it. Then I'm going to adjust the size of this a little bit, and then I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm just going to go and start spreading that text out, and I'm going to just make this quick. I think maybe like 400, something like that. Boom, boom, boom. And I have my rulers up here. If you can't see those, you just go to View, and then you go Show Guides. right here, and that'll give you kind of these rulers. And I like to bring these in, just drop them on the corners so I know exactly where this thing needs to go. So in this case, I'm going to do like that. Let's go 500. Almost perfect. Make it just a little bit bigger. And boom. There we have it. All set up. Go ahead and remove these. Now the problem with this is it's black and we need it to be white. So what we'll do, just click on this, go down to our color, change it to white. Same thing here. Make it white. And now we're going to group these layers together so that we don't have to worry about anything. So I'm going to highlight both of them. I'm going to come up here to help, type group, because I can't remember where it is. And it'll just tell me that's where you got to go to group the layers. And now these two layers become one, makes it much easier to deal with. Now, next thing I want to do is come up here, File, Open, and we're going to grab from our desktop that image we just created over in Lightroom. And I'm going to open it up as a new canvas, and then I'm going to go back to my VSL that I just created. I'm going to click Command C or Control C if you're on a PC to copy it, bring it back over here, paste it in here, and then I'm going to make it big. Boom. There we go. Now, I know kind of where I want this thing to go. I can stretch it out a little bit if I need to. We kind of want it, if you look on the one I did, I kind of had it set up a lot like this previously, right? And we want to weave kind of this text back behind the camera like this. So to do that, what we got to do is we got to take our background layer and we're going to duplicate it. So I'm going to right click and click duplicate. That's going to create a second background image, and I'm going to drag that one above my primary image. And so now I have, if I shut off the top layer, you'll see, there it is. The text is underneath, and I'm just going to come to this top layer and reduce the opacity by, oh, whatever you think. It can be anything, maybe about 50%, just so you can start to see this VSL logo in here. And then what I'm going to do is come up here to the top left. I'm going to click on this pixel persona. So right now we're on the designer persona. We're going to go to the pixel one, and we're going to grab our eraser tool. And what we're going to do, all we're going to do, is first of all, we're going to boost this up to maybe like 80. Well, we got to do more than that. 300. And I'm just going to start painting or start erasing. And what I'm doing is I'm erasing the top layer to expose the bottom layer. And so again, flow, hardness, good to go. We're going to zoom in here. Again, I'm just going to color this up to bring it to life. Okay. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to do a really rough edit of this. You will probably want to come back in and spend a lot more time putting this together, right? So that it looks really nice and you got nice clean edits. But for the sake of time, there's no reason for us to all do that here today and spend time watching me edit this down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, if I come back here to the background and now I just take this up to 100, what you're going to see is that main image now is going to come, or that top image is going to come back in full force, except for the areas where I haven't cut out. So that gives that nice round. And then you can come back in and you can kind of see, yeah, I didn't do a very good job in there. There's still some opacity. I need to repaint, right? Maybe I need to, yeah, may have to come in and make some adjustments to it. So I hope that was helpful, guys. I hope that kind of gave you a rundown on some of the things that you can do. Again, go out there, start looking at some LUTs, some things to make your process easier. There's nothing wrong with cheating. We like cheating here. The goal is to get it done and get it out so that we can get our content consumed and hopefully start attracting more subscribers and then from that more buyers. So if you did like this, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know that you liked it. If you want to see more content like this, I've got a lot more stuff, kind of like quick ways of doing things for those of you who are business owners and have content and video content as part of your marketing strategy. I would love to share more with you, and if enough of you are interested, I'm happy to do it. So leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.